Hey guys, welcome to If You Have to Pick Three. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
You clicked on the picture, shaken, not stirred this time. It's a pick three list of one of the oldest and longest running movie franchises ever, James Bond.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you hear the dun 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 dun, you automatically know it's James Bond. That's how iconic the music to James Bond is. And on top of that, it's led to some of the most iconic theme songs for each movie, and to the point that like artists actually fight over the chance to do a James Bond theme song. Unfortunately, the 25th James Bond installment, No Time to Die, it was supposed to come out in April of this year. Then it was supposed to come out in November. Now it's coming out in 2021. I'm not even going to say what month because who knows at this point. But it's exciting that it's going to be the fifth and final time of Daniel Craig's take on James Bond. Also, I mean, to be a little bittersweet, the recent passing of Sean Connery, the original James Bond, I figured now more than ever, it's a great time to have the ultimate debate. What are the three best James Bond theme songs? So let's just get right into it. Matt, would you like to go first or would you like me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
You're such a gentleman, just like James Bond.
I got my martini all ready to listen.
So, first one, I'm going to go with a little diddly from a Beatle. Paul McCartney and Wings' contribution to the 1973 James Bond film Live and Let Die of the same title. It was actually the first James Bond film from Roger Moore and his first of 6 appearances as James Bond. That was actually a record until recently of all the James Bond films. It combines the over-the-top orchestra with a rock song. It's just so badass of a song. And it's a great way to kind of introduce a action film in the 70s. So Live and Let Die, Paul McCartney and Wings. I actually always loved Guns N' Roses' cover of that song, but that was just always fun to hear.
I have lots of feelings on this pick. I'm going to let him go for now.
Oh, sounds like we're going to have a fun debate in a few minutes.
Yes.
Second, when I think of a James Bond song, to me, this song really created the blueprint for songs to follow it. Yeah, I'm talking about Shirley Bassey's Goldfinger, the theme song for the third iconic 1964 James Bond film of the same name. And it's funny because if you ask a lot of people, Goldfinger is one of the most iconic James Bond films of all time. And you can make the same argument about the song itself. It just feels like what a spy would listen to as he's going undercover and about to kill a bunch of villains. Goldfinger, my second pick. And the third one, I already feel Matt's eyes about to get ready to roll over in this one, but I'm going to say it anyway. Adele's Skyfall, the theme song for the James Bond film of the same name. And not only did I pick that as my third pick because it is such a great song and really does do a great job at capturing the overall theme of that particular Bond film, where James Bond's been out of action for a little bit and he's trying to get back into the new world where your villains aren't necessarily easy to find or pinpoint, and dealing with all this new technology that's kind of made some of his work obsolete. But on top of that, it's actually the first James Bond song to actually ever win an Oscar. Did you know that, Matt?
Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't.
Well, I'm glad that you do a little research. No, it was actually the first time a James Bond song got nominated since 1981. It was For Your Eyes Only where we received the nomination, but it was the first James Bond song to ever win an Oscar. Not the last, since the following year Sam Smith won it for his okay song. But I always thought just Skyfall did such a great job at kind of capturing what Shirley Bassey was going for with Goldfinger, but then adding a whole just new eerie level to it. So that's my three to recap: Goldfinger, Live and Let Die, and Skyfall. Ironically, and I did not intend for this, all of my songs were actually named after the movie they were contributed to. I know that's usually the case in most James Bond songs, but there's been a few exceptions as to some artists contribute songs that don't use the same title.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because
I had a feeling, but please. So now, Matt, you name your choices.
All right. The first one, since you just mentioned it, I'm going to start with that one. A lot of what people consider to be great James Bond songs are obviously of the female variety. I don't know why that is. Maybe they felt like James Bond is too masculine to have a male musician contribute to the soundtrack. However, I feel, and maybe I'm a little bit biased on this one because this is my favorite Bond film. Chris Cornell, his contribution to Casino Royale and You Know My Name. If anybody did the best male version of a Bond song, it's definitely Chris Cornell. It's got that true classic 60s-esque vibe to it because let's face it, whenever anybody ever talks about Bond films, it's always got like this certain vibe to it when the music comes, and it definitely is that 60s vibe, like Zach said earlier with Shirley Bassey and Goldfinger. But I think Chris Cornell did a truly fantastic job with You Know My Name. My second one might be a little controversial. It definitely introduced a very different sound to what a Bond song could be, but I feel the combination of when the movie came out, the musician who did it, and just the overall popularity of the movie, not just from the movie's perspective, but from a video game perspective. I'm going to say Tina Turner and GoldenEye. I love GoldenEye. That's my second favorite Bond movie. So, spoiler, yes, this is kind of why I'm putting it on here. But Tina Turner did such a great job on that song. And like I said, it doesn't go for that traditional 60s-esque vibe that all the other Bond songs kind of have. It goes for maybe a little bit more of a techno-y feel because the movie was all based around like technology, and it was based, at that time on what was very high-tech, like satellite technology. And it ushered in the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond. So it kind of wanted to go a little bit of a different route, So I think that, the synth style beats that they have in there, it definitely gives a very 90s feel to Bond, and it just encapsulates everything so well. So that's my number two. And then my final one, and I'm going to say this, and anybody who loves Bond is probably not going to like what I'm going to have to say. No, it is not Jack White and Alicia Keys, because that was the worst.
I actually really like that song. But continue. That's not the point. Continue.
I never tell anybody that their opinion is wrong, but you're wrong. That was terrible, and Sheryl Crow even did a better job. So I'm going to just say that, no, that one was bad. But I'm going to say my third and final one is Adele and Skyfall.
Where did I hear that before? Continue.
The reason why I say is there has to be a turning point for what something is, in whatever it is. Somebody develops a car, and then, the car is iconic, but then somebody develops an even more iconic, better version of that car, and then that's the new icon. Shirley Bassey was for years and years and years just the voice of Bond. And, whenever you think of Bond, like we said earlier, Goldfinger being a great example of that, there has to be a time when somebody does it better. And Skyfall was, I think, that classic Bond song being turned over to somebody who clearly does it better and really kind of brings it to the next level. A lot of Bond songs don't feel ultra focused, and some of them feel kind of hokey, and that's why I didn't put Shirley Bassey on here. I feel like some of the songs that they do are kind of hokey. People are going to, like I said, they're going to shoot me. They're not going to like that I don't like Goldfinger, because a lot of people consider that to be, like, no pun intended, the gold standard of Bond songs. But then if that's the gold standard, Adele's Skyfall is the platinum standard. It's just so much better. It's more focused. It's got that classic timeless Bond sound, but with a 21st century flair. It is the song that helped launch a $1 billion Bond movie for the first time. It has, and probably, you could say this is for other reasons, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. It's got the most views of a Bond song of all time and plays on YouTube, and there's a reason for it. Yeah. It's an amazing song. It's an amazing version of what a Bond song and a feel of a Bond movie should be, because let's face it, A Quantum of Solace or whatever the hell the name of that movie was.
They don't even know.
Was a garbage movie. Absolute garbage.
So there's a reason why that was a garbage movie, though. Well, you know why.
Go on.
Well, mainly because if you look at when it came out, sorry, this is me being a Bond nerd. It was really right around the time of the writer's strike. So if you actually, and there's scenes in that movie that you're like, man, this scene could have been so much better if they just added in like a classic Bond line or like a witty remark. And instead, it's just awkward silence. And I think, now granted, I'm not saying that this is definitely the answer, but like, I gotta believe that the fact that the writer's strike of 2006 or 7, 2007, 2008 happened around that time. You can definitely see how that impacted the lackluster Bond film that followed after such a strong reaction and success of Casino Royale.
Right, and Casino Royale being my favorite Bond movie, and then I was really amped up to see The Quantum of Solace, and
everyone was, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just, it fell flat, completely flat. So now, coming out of that, they needed something ultra strong, and, you could say that if Adele wasn't hired and stepped up to the plate the way that she did, the movie might not have been as successful as it was. Because let's face it, how many people did they lose with that movie? I tried to watch it and I got maybe three quarters of the way through if I was lucky, and turned it off because it lost my interest. And this is,
you're talking about Quantum of Solace.
Yes. Yeah.
I would argue that Skyfall in general is such a great movie.
It is. And I'm saying it this way. The build up to a Bond movie is the song and then the movie. The song is released way ahead of the movie. Like I said, Jack White and Alicia Keys, that's like oil and water in my opinion.
I still I thought it was honestly, the only good thing to come out of that movie was the song. I'm not saying it's the perfect song, and there's a reason why the song's not on my list, but I actually really thought that song got shat on more than it should. Let's be honest. The worst Bond song is Madonna's Die Another Day.
I don't know if that's even higher than that.
No, bullshit.
Hey, those words just came out of my mouth.
I disagree completely. Anyway, but this is not about the worst songs. I have a world famous Zach compromise to throw at you. But before we get into that, favorite actor to play Bond, who would you say? Not who you think is the best, but who's your favorite?
My favorite? I'm having such a hard time. Because GoldenEye was just such a classic movie to me. I love Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
We're going to go Pierce Brosnan. Daniel Craig did a great job in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. We know that mess.
But that wasn't his fault.
No, it wasn't. But Skyfall,
I love Skyfall.
I actually haven't watched the whole thing. And because once again, the Quantum of Solace left such a bad taste in my mouth, I really just didn't want to get into it.
Give Skyfall a chance. It's worth it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I plan on it. And then Spectre, I just never saw it.
That had moments, but that had moments. That's the best thing to say about Spectre. I will say Daniel Craig is my favorite because I think he does a great job at capturing some of the more grittier aspects of Bond like Sean Connery did in the early days. With that said, if it wasn't for The World's Not Enough and Die Another Day, I'd say Pierce Brosnan is the perfect Bond. Because not only was GoldenEye, like I was watching again recently, and it's still so much fun, and he really was phenomenal as Bond in that movie. But also, I feel like Tomorrow Never Dies is a really underrated Bond film.
I think a lot of what he did was underrated. Those other two movies, it did. Campiness. Those other two movies, though, they weren't the top of Bond, but he still made it work.
I think the other problem though was because Pierce Brosnan was being looked at to play Bond way sooner than 95. He was The Living Daylights and License to Kill. Mm-hmm. They were eyeing him instead of Timothy Dalton to play Bond, but he had TV stuff that was preventing him from doing Bond. It kind of makes you wonder, if he had a few more Bond films under his belt when he was younger, would perception of him, because he was already pretty high up there in age by the time he did Die Another Day. That was just a terrible film in general, though, Die Another Day.
It's got moments. But
yeah, I think when Daniel Craig first stepped in, I think everyone was quick to go, oh yeah, Pierce Brosnan, whatever, Daniel Craig. But the more you think back to it, it's like, man, he really was freaking good.
Mm-hmm.
He was freaking good. Kind of miss, but and it'll be interesting to see because Daniel, it's pretty much confirmed. I always feel weird saying it's confirmed because I feel like they always end up changing their minds because every time a Bond film comes out, it's the last one with so and so. But it sounds like this really is Daniel Craig's last Bond film.
I feel like it was twisting his arm to even get him to do this film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really was. And I almost kind of, as much as I like Daniel Craig, and this new one, No Time to Die, with the previews that they did show so far, it looks phenomenal. And I'm excited to see it. But I did feel like you can tell that his heart wasn't really in it during Spectre.
Yeah.
And from what you kind of hear, there was so many, fights behind the scenes as to how to do this or that, which is funny because there were moments like Batista as the henchman in Spectre was so badass. But I'm curious to see who they can get. I would have probably been okay if Spectre was Daniel Craig's last outing and they tried a new Bond. But that's beside the point. We're not film critics. When it comes to the best Bond theme songs, I'd like to propose a compromise. So obviously, or in regards to Adele,
she's got to be in there.
She's definitely there. And I actually loved when you said how it just sounds so focused, because that's so true. For a song that is as epic and so larger than life sounding, it is focused. The second pick I would give to Chris Cornell, You Know My Name. Okay. Because I really did think that was a badass song. Fun fact about that song, it is actually the only theme song from Bond to not actually be on the soundtrack. Did you know that?
I thought it was, but
it appeared in the film, but it did not actually. So when they released the soundtrack, they didn't have it on the soundtrack because Chris Cornell was like, no, I want this. I did a majority of the writing of this song. I want this to be on my album, Carry On. So it actually, and I'm sure there was like digital releases of it, but it never actually appeared on the soundtrack. And it's the only song from the James Bond theme song catalog to not be on the original soundtrack. And it really does a great job at capturing the, like you said, it's like introducing the new era of Bond. Here we were after years of like cheesy gadgets and action scenes. Here was a more grittier Bond that fans of the original Connery era would actually appreciate. This song was a great way of going, introducing that era. So that would be the second pick.
Okay.
But then the third one, so I gave you Chris Cornell. I asked that you give me Shirley Bassey with Goldfinger.
I was going to say, if you put Paul McCartney on here, I was going to fight you real hard.
So it sounds like we agree with the three, but I want to know what your problem is with Live and Let Die before we finalize this.
My problem with Live and Let Die is when you hear that song, you don't, at least in my opinion, you don't associate that with Bond at all.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, hang on, because it's probably one of the best things that Paul McCartney and Wings did. However, you hear Guns N' Roses cover, and I think it's better than Paul McCartney's version, hands down. And it just doesn't feel like a Bond song. It's like Chris Cornell still kind of stayed in that, that vibe, that maybe that 60s type of vibe, and like the verse of the songs with the way that he drives the music. Paul McCartney and Wings sounded like they were just recording a song to make it a #1 hit. It didn't sound like a Bond song. And I don't understand, at least once again, in my opinion, I don't understand how that was even in consideration or why they even wanted that to be the song for that movie.
Meanwhile, I think it sounds like the orchestra with the do-do-do, like it sounds like an awesome Bond song, but that's not the point. We agree it won't be in the final three.
Yes.
So to recap then, the final three best Bond theme songs are Shirley Bassey, Goldfinger, Adele's Skyfall, and Chris Cornell's You Know My Name, the theme song of 2006 Casino Royale.
And the best male Bond song.
Please let us know if you agree with our list, if you feel that one song is better than the other, or just let us know if you think we really need to watch more James Bond films if we're missing something. At Epic Footnote on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And thank you all so much for listening. And we hope that you tune in for another episode.
See ya.
Bye.